name is Anne-Marie Echunga. Currently, I work as an independent consultant. I have my organization called Rauka Africa Consultancy. And we organize for 8 consultative meetings with the community. And the first meeting was basically going to find out. It was a meeting and an activity at the same time. Going to find out from the people in this community, what are your boundaries? In spite of the administrative boundaries, we need to know what are the dynamics in the community. So that was our first activity. It's called spatial mapping, just generally looking at the space, the infrastructure in it, all the natural resources in them, and how to map them down. So this was drawn down on the ground, with the community taking the lead role. We just explained to them that we need you to help us identify where your east is, your west is, your north and south is. And then you draw a map showing what are your boundaries with other communities in the same location. And putting down also the infrastructure in terms of schools, in terms of roads, and in terms of hospitals and water points. Those are very important. Placing them exactly where they fall within the community. So this was a half day's activity. Even as we were watching them do this activity, you could see all the kind of discussions and arguments that they had with each other. And said, no, this road passes here. This is somebody else's, another location. We have a water point here. It's dry, it's not being used. So in just watching them do this kind of activity, we are getting a lot of information. And they too are learning from each other. And this is an empowering process, just like I said. As they learn from each other, then they also get to visualize exactly how their community is. And then the activity that we had in the afternoon that followed that involved us and the community now walking through the community. We divided the community into about 6 sections, and they guided us in doing this. We are looking at the communities by themselves because they have different names of the clans within the community. A community like Kabuong, which is a beach, and they have A and B. They have Lieta, A and B. So there are all these segments within the community which we do not want to interfere with because they have their own dynamics. So what we did was the teams from Happy Villages, 1 person each, paired up with a member of the community. And we walked through the community. We had a target. Our central place was a church that the community had identified as a central point within that community. It's an Anglican church called ACK Lieta. And that was our starting point. So we started from that point and walked to the end of the community that each group was given to work with. And while walking through, we had a lot of things to observe. We were observing the vegetation, looking at the environmental concerns, like there's a lot of erosion. These are things that we noted down. We noted schools that we passed through, any economic activity like fishing or agriculture that we noticed on the way. We looked at the animals, we looked at the people, the kind of houses that are there. And this helps us as Happy Villages to know, to kind of visualize exactly what is this community. It's not just what the community is telling us, but we get to see if they're talking of not having water, then this helps us to know that you actually need to walk for 2 or 3 kilometers to reach a water point. And is that water point safe? Is it clean water? How is it managed? So all this information was helping us as we collect social data. Then we get to know that this data this is what is going on in this community, so that even as we plan with the community, we are not planning out of ignorance. We know what we had already seen, and we can try and backtrack this into what they are telling us at every stage of data collection or planning, collecting information for planning. The second activity that we did was called, that is on the second day, seasonality diagramming. And this one helps us to understand the community in terms of their availability, how are women engaged in labor, how are men engaged in labor, and at what times of the year. So the seasonal diagramming talks about a duration of 1 year, 1 calendar year, that's from January to December, and looking at what do women do and for how long do they do it? What do men do and for how long do they do it? We look at the income, what's the cash flow within this community and where is it coming from? And you'd see that it's so much related with the economic activity. If it's during harvesting, then the cash will be most likely high at that time. If it's during fishing, then the cash will be most likely high at that time. We also need to know what are some of the diseases which affect this community and which people does it affect. Is it adults? Is it children? Is it related in any way to the parasites available or the scarcity of water in that community? And then we also go ahead and look at the weather patterns, because if we are going to intervene, then we need to know how this community affected at any one time of the year. When does it rain? When is it windy? When is it dry? And if at all we are planning with them, then we need to know this is the best time to plan with this community in terms of agriculture or in terms of fishing. So the seasonal diagramming, it's a diagram just the way it is, and the community, we work with the community to help identify some of the symbols that they identify with. Like if we are looking at labor, then we needed to find out from the community what would be the best symbol to represent a man in this community. And like in Lieta, they came up with a clap. The women, what would symbolize women? They came up with a bucket of water, and they say that is what represents women to them. So these are the symbols that we put in the chart. You have to know that women are busy at this time, men are busy at this other time. And together with that, as we are doing the seasonal diagramming, it was very important to know what are some of the trends in this community. What are some of, for instance, the diseases that have evolved over time. The activity which followed that was an activity with children. That's child-focused analysis. And here we're just talking to children, trying to make it as simple as possible. What kind of environment do you have now in terms of your home, in terms of your schooling, in terms of your health? And what is the ideal environment that you'd like also in terms of all that? And they wrote compositions, they drew pictures. In some of the pictures you'd see water tanks next to the houses. It means water is an issue and children also feel it. They talk of school, the desks in the school. They talk of books that they'd like to read. So this helps whoever is reading the information in translating it, that children see a need somewhere and they feel if this is improved, then life can be better for them. And with working with the children, we have very young children, all the way from 9 years to 14. And we also had high school children and those who had dropped out of school because of a lot of problems. And they also had a discussion and they could talk about all the issues that affect them. With regards, like with the younger people, they talked a lot about HIV, which seems to affect them a lot. They have information, they're not sure how to use some of the information. They are threatened by the disease. Those who are already sick do not know how to get help. They are very stigmatized, so they are dying and they do not know what to do. So this would be a unique kind of intervention, just targeting a certain population within that community so as to prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS. The best thing about this process is that as you discuss, you can see the kind of arguments, the kind of discussions that they have amongst themselves, and you can see that their intellect is being challenged and say, okay, this can happen. And in this process, we also give them information. We tell them, okay, in this community, we've seen this happen. And here, this is how some people cope, and how would you like to cope yourself? So they develop strategies for coping on their own.